What's up, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls? I'm JC Owens, and this is Rock My World, episode 34, Upgrading the Indoctrination System. Now, we've talked a little bit about the U.S. education system before, and, you folks that's been watching for any length of time will know I have my problems, my issues with it, especially, once I was about 15 and I got a hold of John Taylor Gatto's work and started really learning where it came from. To those that don't know, our education system is born of the Prussian military education system that was designed specifically to take the Prussian people and make them obedient workers and soldiers who would do whatever the state asked, including kill and be killed for the state. No questions asked. Our, our national leaders here in the West at the time, here in the U.S., UK, France, they looked at this system and said, hey, we could actually use this to make our factories better, right? Like people like the Rockefellers are like, hey, like our factories will run way better if we, give everyone a baseline education in what we want them to know, and we train them from the time they're little to, line up at the time clock, punch that card, and all that kind of stuff, right? All right. That is the basic framework for why our system was designed the way it was, and why it was adopted. We've had the same system since the 1800s. This system was built for a time without the internet, without any of these super high-tech tools we have today. Like social media was, not even fully like dreamt of yet. I'm pretty sure. I don't think anyone had really thought about, communication on that level quite yet, outside maybe the uber elite. To those in the know, like you would be, you would be aware that these things like robots and even concepts of, like Martians on Mars have been around for a lot longer than most people think. Since like the 1800s, a lot of this stuff, some of it, like, goes back even further than that. Leonardo da Vinci was kicking around ideas of automatons, and the Japanese were working on automatons back in their Middle Ages. So, this kind of stuff has been around a long time, a very long time. But for the most part, people here in America hadn't really given any thought to this kind of stuff, the average person. So, the school system as it was perfectly useful and did its job exactly as the elite wanted it to for a long time. But now we do have these tools. Now we do have social media. Now we do have a computer in every pocket. Now they can watch you from cradle to grave, every second of the day if they want to. Now they can influence you every second of the day if they want to. And that's a big part of why you're going to start seeing a lot more of this transition away from the classic school system, right? Now, a lot of this craziness that you saw, like with the left, and what they were doing in schools with the letting kids think they're cats and all this kind of stuff, well, this was part of the, as we talked about before, one side will do something to create the justification so the other side can move the agenda forward, right? Okay, the left make the school system look really, really bad. So now you can collapse it and replace it with something else. And that thing is going to be, SLS micro schools, micro credentials, which will be like, for those of you who play mobile games, and, like PlayStation games and stuff, it'll be like little digital trophies and badges that say, like, well, you've completed this or you can do this. They will be little stackable certificates that you get all these little certificates built up into a digital CV, right? Your digital portfolio that's tied to your digital ghost. This will follow you from the time you're born and like start being able to learn to, till the day you die. right? That's the way they're wanting to tailor this, right? Your driver's license, your health information, everything is going to be tailored to this one account. They're going to be able to use VR and augmented reality to overlay things over your day-to-day so that you can learn the way they want you to learn. They will be watching all the time. They will know what your skills are, what you're capable of, and then they will help place you in some field or area of need, at will, right? Like they will, look into your file and they'll say, oh, well, you need to be over here because you can do this and you can do that. So you'd be really perfectly, suited for this job, right? What was that movie? It started from the book Divergent. Divergent. Yeah, in that series, the children, come up and they get to choose which area of expertise and which group they will go with, based on their preferences and what they're capable of. They test all these kids and they find out, well, should they go over here with the science people, or should they go over here with the agriculture people, or should they go over here with the workers or the standard workers? It's all a different, classification system based on Plato's ideal utopian system, with a little high-tech flair, right? This is what they've been working towards, since America was founded, since before America was founded. If any of you have read, America's Secret Destiny by Manly P. Hall, or Sir Francis Bacon's New Atlantis, these books that I've, posted, in my reading list there, you'll be familiar with a lot of these ideas, and this, going towards this utopian society, you'll be aware that it's been going on a long time. It's been going on a long time, and you will recognize a lot of the things that are going on now. Like, in those books, you'll see that, there is a plan here. That's really what I've been here trying to explain and, get people to understand, is that this is not just coincidence. I'm not some soothsayer or somebody who, is, reading tarot cards to see the future. No, I know where things are going because these people have been writing it down and saying it forever. Just nobody ever reads it or looks into it deep enough to, to recognize it, or at least people didn't. There are a lot more people who recognize this stuff today, or much more willing to entertain it. But, I have to admit, a lot of this is by their design as well. Now that they are so close to the completion of their great work and their complete digitization, automation, and, 24-hour surveillance and control, basically, of society, now that they're so close, they're not really worried about people knowing as much. I would say that they're getting a little cocky, but, they are that confident that they have given permission to, my former brothers in the order to come out and start teaching y'all this stuff. I see their YouTube channels all the time. They are growing every day, and they are pushing the Templar narrative, the Freemasonic narrative, the Rosicrucian narrative. They might all be slightly different on the surface, but it's all the same, ideology. They're all working towards the same goal. Those who I would say that they are separate, I would say, go look for an annual called the 68th Rosicrucian Convocation. There's a roll call in there. I know that one's out there floating around somewhere. There's a roll call in there for Rosicrucians and Freemasons, and, it specifically says, all others, favorable to the Hebrew, and, what they mean by that is Kabbalah and, Kabbalah mysticism, I should say. And the Gnostic tenets that drive these orders, they subscribe to things like Zionism, British Israelism, and a lot of these ideas came out of these orders in the first place, along with all the rest of the ideas from the Enlightenment. Before I rattle on anymore, I guess I'll let you folks go there. Have a good one. As always, much love and peace out.